Welcome to another episode of Good Politics with Adam Whiteman and Dr. Wilson. We have some pretty cool stuff to get into today, right?
Yeah, we do. Before we start, I want to tell you that you can find us by Googling Good Politics, Dr. Wilson. You can find our podcast there, or you can put Good Politics in quotes, YouTube channel, and you can find our YouTube channel. But what we want to do is begin today's show because there's a lot of really, really exciting things going on right now. There's a firestorm out there, Adam. We got this thing with Trump. He's under fire, and look, he's going to be subject to an impeachment proceeding. And there's lots of different things we can talk about. We can talk about impeachment. We can talk about all the different ways that people imagine this thing to exist. But I think the very first thing that we have to do to really understand this is to try to get into some background information.
Yeah. So where did this all start?
All right. So there's this country called Ukraine, and it borders Russia. And it's got these divisions in it because half of it is Russian-speaking and kind of is pro-Russian, and the other half isn't. And in 2014, this situation came to blows. These people started fighting. And amid that crisis in 2014, Joe Biden was dispatched there to go and try to get to give some help. And in 2014, when he goes there, something happens that's going to start this whole narrative. Now, keep in mind, we're only giving you the background because we're going to walk our way into this. It's a very complicated thing, very complicated, and we're going to try to walk us into it. So let's get started by playing clip number one.
At issue was Hunter Biden profiting off his dad's work as vice president, and did Joe Biden allow it? We're talking about millions of dollars in at least two countries. In 2014, Ukrainians, sick of corruption, revolted. Vice President Joe Biden went to Kiev to help the new government. But then, something strange happened. Just 3 weeks later, a Ukrainian natural gas company, Burisma, accused of corruption, appoints Hunter Biden, seen here in their promotional videos, to their board of directors, paying his firm more than $1 million a year. Hunter, a lawyer who had just been discharged from the Navy Reserves for testing positive for cocaine.
Mr. Hunter Biden.
He had served on other boards, but had no known experience in Ukraine or natural gas.
Okay, so what you have is, at the same time that Biden goes over there, one of the things that happens is his son gets this cozy job. You know, and he doesn't have any experience in this industry, and he's put on the board of directors of this company called Burisma. And
This is Hunter Biden.
Yeah, Hunter Biden, his son. Okay, now Burisma is an energy company that was accused of corruption at the time before Biden's son got there. The co-founder, what happened is there was this co-founder of this energy company. The energy company is called Burisma, and the co-founder was also a governmental environmental official from 2010 to 2012. So he's in the government. He had to flee the Ukraine at the very end of 2014 because he was under suspicion of embezzlement and money laundering. It looks like one way that he thought to get out of his troubles was to hire Biden's son. Because the Democrats were in power at that time, and they were coming into Ukraine. Okay, and you keep in mind that Ukraine is a country that has had in the past. You know, there's this corruption thing that goes on a lot of times in some of these countries like Russia or whatever. There's a history where, you know, you have to pay for play. You have to
right.
Okay, so the party leader would take a cut or whatever you're doing. So all right, so play clip number two.
That story is complicated by the fact that Biden's son Hunter and his business partners at an energy firm called Burisma were reportedly part of a broad effort by Burisma to bring in well-connected Democrats during a period when the company was facing investigations backed not just by domestic Ukrainian forces, but by officials in the Obama administration. Now, that's all according to the New York Times.
They were facing investigation.
Right. So,
and was it that, so they were under investigation and then they hired Hunter?
Right.
Hunter
so
Biden.
He's the company gets in trouble. There's claims of embezzlement or whatever. And in order to try to play damage control, they hire Biden's son, who has no experience in the matter. Now, So this guy has to flee the country in 2014 because he's under investigation. Now, keep in mind who's investigating him. The UK is investigating him. I believe also the Department of Justice has investigations on him. You're probably wondering why.
American Department of Justice.
Right, because you're probably wondering why. My understanding is, we have globalism. So if you steal money and it gets into the global financial system, there's fraudulent transfers and so forth. I suppose that what happens when you steal money, you try to wash it. I'm not an expert on this, but anyway, I know for sure the UK has an investigation of him. The United States has an investigation of him and had an investigation of him, and also the Ukrainians will begin an investigation of him. He has to flee the country in 2014. The UK seized 23.5 million of his bank assets. But when he flees in 2014, the United States officials warn of negative consequences if the Ukraine failed to cooperate with UK prosecutors. Here's what's happening. The question's whether the prosecutor in the case, what he's up to. A lot of times if the prosecutor's corrupt, what would they do? They might say, oh, you stole this money, where's my cut? Okay, so that's one way, that's one thesis. We don't know what this prosecutor was doing because there's two narratives. The traditional narrative was that this was a corrupt prosecutor who wasn't doing anything to actually prosecute any corruption. In other words, he was letting this guy get away. The British court ended up having to release the funds because the Ukrainians didn't cooperate with the prosecution. And then what happens is that prosecutor then got promoted. He got promoted in February of 2015. Keep the timeline right. We were in 2014. Now we're into 2015, February. Shokin got promoted. Shokin took no action to pursue the cases against this person through 2015. And there are people underneath Shokin saying, hey, why aren't you prosecuting this? Now, we have to be careful because there's also another narrative. Shokin himself says, I was prosecuting him, but the people above me didn't want it to happen. He was trying to blame his boss. But I don't want to get into that because it's a rabbit hole.
Gets sticky there.
Yeah. So the point is, Shokin in 2015 gets promoted to a general prosecutor. There was no action taken throughout 2015, and then the U.S. stepped up its criticism in September of 2015. Keep the timeline right. Now we're into September 2015 when the ambassador to Ukraine during a speech accused officials of working under Shokin to subvert the UK investigation. The U.S. is mad that they're not cooperating with these investigations. And finally, the U.S. decides that it wants this prosecutor Shokin removed. And the person who gets the assignment to do it is none other than Joe Biden. Now, keep in mind, all this time that we've talked about, Hunter Biden is still on that company. Is still on that company. He's on the board of directors on that company, and he's making a lot of money. He's making millions of dollars. He's making $50,000 a month in salary. That's $600,000, and plus his firm that he works for also is getting a lot of money. And so what happens is Biden comes and steps in, and play clip number 3.
But it just happened to be that was the assignment I got. I got all the good ones, so I got Ukraine, and I remember going over convincing our team, or others, to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired.
So they're saying that he wanted to fire the prosecutor that was above him at the time, or that he wanted to fire his predecessor.
Right. Here's what happens. This prosecutor that we've been talking about, this Shokin guy, Biden and the United States State Department and the Obama administration, they wanted him fired. And So Biden goes over there and says, look, we got these loan guarantees for you, money. And you're not going to get this money unless you fire the prosecutor, which eventually ends up happening. But so far, all we've established, it looks like a conflict of interest. Biden is acting in a way that where his son is on this company. Now, here's what happens. After the prosecutor gets fired, the investigation against Burisma still goes on, and it ends up paying back taxes in October of 2017. And the CEO comes back home without any trouble at all. Okay, so it's just a back tax case.
So the investigation was concluded. All they had to do was just pay back taxes.
Right, but now here's the problem. We don't know what the situation. There's different narratives going on here. We don't know whether what was happening was Shokin was squeezing that company to try to get bribes, or whether Shokin was actually trying to prosecute that company. There's two different narratives that are out there. And the point is, Biden comes in and gets the prosecutor removed, and now we enter the situation with Donald Trump. Because Trump, and particularly Rudy Giuliani, they're looking at this situation and they think there's more there than we know about. And frankly, we don't know everything. There's these different, and so what they want to do is they want to find out what happened.